One at least is nearly as important as the Kashmir dispute, that of Assam and some districts of India adjacent to East Pakistan. To these, Pakistan has a good claim. This was not only the sentiment which Mr. Bhutto expressed, because he was known to be advocating a 1,000-year war against India. Pre-1971, somebody whom we regarded as a great friend of India in Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in his book Eastern Pakistan, Its Population and Economics Observed, and I'm quoting from Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's book, and I quote, because Eastern Pakistan must have sufficient land for its expansion, and because Assam has abundant forest and mineral resources, coal, petroleum, etc., Eastern Pakistan must include Assam to be financially and economically strong. Now you on one hand had a design that some of these regions could be added to what was then East Pakistan. On the other hand, you had the vote bank interest which discarded the Gopinath Bordoloi line and which said, let us get migrants over, we are a convenient vote bank. Now unconsciously these two designs overlapped each other. And you had the most unprecedented demographic change which has taken place in the region. Have you seen the kind of demographic changes? Now kindly link it to what we call concerns of national security. Kokrajhar is Bodo population is significantly there. Adjacent to it is Dhubri. The 2001 census shows Dhubri with almost 71% population, not ethnic minority, but migrants. In 2011, when the results of the census are declared, this figure is likely to cross 80. Now, where do you have 80% illegal immigrants? Adjacent to the Bangladesh border, right next to the Chicken's Neck. And therefore, the kind of security threat it constitutes to India, besides being an expansion of the territory, today we have friendly relations, we hope to strengthen those friendly relations. But no countries allow encroachment into their territory by an illegal immigration in this manner. We have allowed them to do so. So a question then arises, how do we get rid of these people? How do you say all of them are foreign nationals? So I was reading in terms of jurisprudence, the most legendary and liberal name in the world, at least from our jurisprudence point of view, has been Lord Dennings. Now on the due process of law, how do you get rid of these people who are foreigners who immigrate illegally? Whether it's an American or it's a Pakistani or it's a British citizen or a Bangladeshi who comes without legitimacy and enters our territory, must be thrown out by a due process. You can't say a due process is not possible and therefore we don't throw them out. Now Lord Dennings has probably the most monumental work on the due process of law, and he is universally regarded as a global authority on the subject. Now England doesn't face these kind of threats, they only have some illegal immigration. Now a liberal like him, when he refers to England, he says, and I quote, in recent times England has been invaded. He uses the word invaded. Not by enemies nor by friends, but by those who seek England as a haven. In their own countries there is poverty, disease and no homes. In England there is social security, a national health service, a guaranteed housing to all to be had for the asking without payment and without working for it. Once here, each seeks to bring his relatives to join him, so they multiply exceedingly. This is speaking about a developed country. And here we are dealing with these bordering districts of Assam, which are as it is economically deprived. So you allow, because there is pressure on land in Bangladesh, there is pressure on the economy in Bangladesh, so you allow an en masse migration to take place. And the result of the en masse migration is that you have a complete demographic change in those regions leading to social tensions. What was the government's approach, sir? And I'll make good this charge against the present government. You had a law which is there in every country, which is called the Foreigners Act. The Foreigners Act is a law by which you check the illegitimate entry of foreigners into any country. The Foreigners Act always has a provision that whenever the state feels that this man is an illegally entered foreigner, the onus of proof is on this person to show that he is a legitimate resident or a citizen. So the Foreigners Act worked very well. So every time the government of India feels that somebody, whether it's from any friendly state or unfriendly state, has wrongfully entered India or overstayed, the Foreigners Act notice is given. The onus of proof is on him to show that he has entered the country unlawfully. You should have applied the Foreigners Act. After all, you had the Assam Accord in 1985. But the government said in 1983 that this Foreigners Act will not suit Assam. The state which is most affected by illegal entry of immigrants is Assam. So you said this act will not apply. We will bring the Illegal Migrants Determination Tribunal. We'll have a tribunal who will determine. And what you did was, in that tribunal, you created a law so that you can make impossible the detection, determination and deportation of an illegal foreigner. The change which you suddenly brought about for Assam was, for the rest of the country, Foreigners Act will apply. But for Assam, the IMDT will apply, and in IMDT, the state has to prove that the man concerned is a foreigner. And when you have millions of people, how does the state prove that? So you made the functioning of that act almost next to impossible. By this provision of shifting the onus, you made OTOs the entire IMDT Act. Now this act was challenged. And my party always had a view that this act should be repealed, go back to the Foreigners Act. The Supreme Court struck down this act and said this is an act which almost encourages aggression and invasion, a silent invasion of India. And therefore this is completely unconstitutional, this act is not acceptable. So go back to the Foreigners Act and start a detection under the Foreigners Act. We thought after the Supreme Court judgment, at least the government would now learn. So what they did was went back to the Foreigners Act and framed rules under the Foreigners Act. The Foreigners Act said the onus is on the alleged foreigner to prove that he is an Indian citizen. They said this provision will not apply to Assam. For Assam, the provision is the state will have to show that he is a foreigner. So what the court struck down in the first round, directly, they brought in directly with laws. Here was a government which not only discarded the traditional Assam Congress line, the Gopinath Bordoloi line, which wanted to completely dismantle and destroy the identity of that state, which directly brought in and then indirectly brought in a provision by you could have illegal settlers in Assam. The Supreme Court considered the challenge for the second time and then again struck it down and said this is completely unconstitutional, this is not acceptable. So your rules have also been struck down as ultra vires the act. We are back to a square one and you are not allowing the Foreigners Act to operate. Now what is the position in districts like Dhubri, Gopalpara, where you have 60, 70, today more than 80% foreigners? On the local inhabitants, there is a pressure. There is pressure on land, there is pressure on economy, there is pressure on resources. And as long as this situation continues, you can say that there are so many people in the relief camp, these cases have been registered, CBI will now investigate matters. This will be at best, I regret to use that word, a clerical approach to resolving this problem. Fortunately, we have the benefit of Mr. Shinde, who is looking at this matter afresh as a new Home Minister. I would urge him, please reject this approach. Please go back to your present leadership I don't know. I am getting mixed signals from your present Chief Minister from the statements I read. At times I see revival of the Gopinath Bodolai approach. At times I see the presence of that vote bank approach. Please have a clarity of thought process as to what is the approach. And the statement, sir, we expect from you is, how did this demographic character of Assam change? Is this social tension completely related to this demographic character being changed? And merely by relief, you must give relief irrespective of who the victim is. Because even if somebody is an illegally entered foreigner, nobody has a right to kill him. He can only be sent back by a due process. So please give relief, because relief is something which is humanitarian. Increase your reliefs in the relief camps. But please address the larger issue. You can't have more than 800 kilometers of border with Bangladesh which is unfenced. There can be a problem with regard to the riverine border, but the rest of the border requires to be fenced. I understand the Honorable Prime Minister on his last visit has been to some extent concerned with that issue to Bangladesh when he recently visited them. So please, let's fence the border. Let's start this detection process. And please apply yourself to the larger issue. And the larger issue is, it is not theoretical enough to say that changed demography in any part of the region will create social tensions. It's not a hypothetical concept. It's a realistic concept. And therefore, providing immediate relief, please do it, please increase it. But then address yourself to the larger issue. If you are willing to go back to the Congress party's original stand, probably India will be safer in your hands. But if you want the vote bank stand which your party subsequently has taken in relation to Assam, I don't think that region of this country will be secure in your hand. Thank you, sir.